Okay, so now we're recording.
Great. So I was thinking before you started recording, maybe I should have said this before you started recording, but how I sort of plan to talk about my thesis as if people weren't familiar with it. And now I'm thinking, the majority of the people here have read the entire thesis and are very familiar with it. So I'll try to create somewhat of a balance to inform people, but also not bore the people that already read all 80 pages of it.
And Candace has just joined us, so now you have at least 2 people who haven't read that.
Great. Hi, Candace. Oh, I can't hear you. That's all right. I can. Hi.
Hello.
All right. So let me just try to open this first. Did it happen?
Yes.
Great. I'm going to try to open it up. Oh, nope, go back. Here we go. Okay, so as many of you know, my thesis is on the development of a reflective wellness self-assessment for music therapists. And I thought first I'd talk just a little bit about the inspiration behind how this came about. It all really started with my own personal experience with burnout. When I started this master's program, I had been practicing at an acute psychiatric facility for about 6 years and had just developed this kind of gradual lack of motivation and inspiration, and was just sort of struggling professionally, and that was kind of carrying over into my personal life as well. And it was really through a lot of the courses in this master's program that conversation around burnout and symptoms of burnout and ways to address it, things to look for, that really started to surface. And so it was through the coursework that and the different classes that we had that little elements started coming together that inspired this project. The one course was a professional issues course where we specifically were talking about burnout as an ethical issue. Our research course really gave me an opportunity to start reading and digging through the research, the music therapy research regarding burnout. Our systems course helped me sort of look at wellness just as a holistic idea rather than just like specifically one issue of my like professional work that was contributing to burnout. Of course, the ongoing supervision that we received throughout all of the courses inspired a lot of critical self-reflection that helped me identify some of these personal and professional patterns that were contributing to my sense of wellness. And then it was finally this music therapy assessment course where, as we were reading other people's assessments and designing our own assessments for music therapy, that I thought, wouldn't it be nice to just have a resource that tied all of those things that I just experienced and learned and could use and that other people could use as not just a tool for a topic that they're interested in, but really as a resource that might help address and prevent burnout within our field. So that's kind of how the party got started. And so as the research suggests, and as we know, burnout is an ethical issue that's prevalent in all helping professions, and music therapy is no exception. And what really inspired the project was that there's no other tool in our field that encourages this type of self-reflection as far as burnout goes for the therapist. So then my intention was to develop a resource that was preventative in nature. I wanted it to be self-reflective, and I wanted it to be unique to the field. As you all know, as a profession, music therapy is unique in what we do. And as therapists, we are unique because of what we do. And as people, we are unique because of what we do. And so I just wanted a tool that really embraced that and was built on the uniqueness that is the music therapy profession. And I'll talk a little bit more about how I attempted to go about doing that. And then once the tool was developed, I wanted to find out whether or not the music therapy profession would have a need for this tool, and whether or not they'd find it useful and valuable. So then that's kind of how I got the ball rolling and started plotting out how I was going to go about developing this assessment. So developing the assessment took place over 4 different phases. The first was a review of music therapy literature regarding burnout and music therapist wellness. And as I kind of mentioned before, I wanted the assessment to be unique to the field and specific to music therapists. So all of the literature that I used to design the assessment is based solely on music therapy research. I used other non-music therapy research studies and other wellness models to as a foundation, and to kind of give me like an understanding of just overall burnout and wellness. But to develop the actual tool, the research was 100% from the music therapy literature. I just thought that would help give it be a little more valuable to the field. And then the second phase was to, after scouring through piles of music therapy research regarding burnout and extracting the results from those studies, the next phase was to design the assessment based on those results. And then after developing the assessment, I sent it out for evaluation from professionals in the field. And then after receiving results from their evaluations of the assessment, I made some changes to it. So that was kind of the game plan of how we went about that. Kind of already talked about this, but these are just a little more details about each of the phases. So like I mentioned, the music therapy literature is what I used to design the assessment. So I searched for anything and everything that had to do with music therapy or music therapists and burnout, compassion fatigue, job satisfaction, occupational stressors, self-care, workplace wellness, any of those types of search words and anything that came along with that. There's a typo in this. Okay, the literature that was used, that I used, was published no earlier than the year 2000. That's silly. And when I decided to kind of make the year 2000 a cutoff for the resources that I was using, initially I thought, well, I think I want the research to be relatively recent. And then I had the really unsettling discovery that the year 2000 is much longer ago than I'd like to admit. So I realized that, well, I don't know how recent 20 years is, but still it helped me identify some of the burnout trends within the past 20 years in the field. So I thought that was useful, and it still makes it relatively relevant to today's music therapists. So the literature that was used was published no earlier than the year 2000. I should say earlier. And then so after reading through all of the research and identifying the results from all the research and identifying what were some preventative factors and some contributing factors to burnout, I organized all of those elements into like a spreadsheet and looked through that a million times and extracted some themes and kind of organized them into categories. And that is how I developed like the layout of the assessment and the design of the categories and things like that, which brings us to the next phase. So I want to show you, I mean, I think some of you have already, no, I just did this and am I going to forget how I did it? Here we go. So after kind of figuring out what categories and things that I was organizing all of the research into, I came up with the categories that you see on the screen there. There are two main categories, professional wellness and personal wellness, and then under each of those categories are like 6 or 7 subcategories. And then under each of those was like specific items, which you'll see on the actual assessment. Under professional wellness, the categories that I were able to organize the research into are workload, environmental and ecological, which by that I mean like the physical work environment as well as like the relational work environment, the interactions, the system within in which you work, the interactions with the people, your workplace's kind of attitudes toward music therapy, so both physical and relational environment. Supports and networking, experience and education, attitude and job satisfaction, and clinical experiences kind of make up the professional wellness category. The personal wellness category involves a lot of your typical like wellness areas that you would see in other wellness assessments, like physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual. Of course, I included a category regarding your relationship with music, your personal supports, personality factors, and environmental and cultural factors. And what I mean by that is, again, kind of your relationship with your environment, the systems in which you live in, and also your personal cultural identities and how that might play a role in someone's wellness. The thing I wanted to show is, as I was sort of organizing all of the research and to fit into all of these categories and trying to decide who belonged where and what all items I was going to use, I sort of like stumbled upon creating this other resource that I think might be a useful tool for somebody to use at some point. So here's all of like the piles of research that I read and the studies that I read and how it's kind of organized. So I think this might be a cool tool for somebody to reference someday. You know, should you be doing the assessment, should you find a particular area that's really resonating with you, and maybe using this as a resource to go back and revisit some of these studies and things like that. So that might be a project for another day. Okay. Let me go back here. Okay, so, and then another important aspect of the design of the assessment was this use of continuum scales. I really wanted, I really did not, I'll tell you what I didn't want. I didn't want the assessment to be something that measures whether or not a person is burnt out. That wasn't the intention of the assessment. And it also, I didn't want the person walking away with a particular score, and if I get this number, then it means this. I just kind of had, that wasn't the intention. And what I really wanted to design was something that was a lot more reflective and inspired a lot more critical thinking and a lot more engagement with themselves and with this assessment and with this topic. So I felt that having more of a continuum where somebody could check anywhere where they existed on this line, and there were descriptive words represented on the line rather than like a number or things like that, would just be more representative of kind of the fluid nature that is wellness. And I don't know, I'm not sure if that's making sense, but that was kind of the intention behind the continuum scales. I was hoping that it would just be a more interactive, or encourage a little more reflection. And also it's not as limiting as like trying to like choose a specific box or a specific selection. So the continuum scales played a big role in the actual like design of the assessment. And then there's also sections that give you an opportunity to do some self-reflection. So in kind of incorporating what you've visualized or marked on the actual like scales, and then kind of reflecting on that and some open-ended questions. And then at this stage of the assessment, I got some feedback from my cohort, and I believe it was our friend Candace, who's with us tonight, who suggested that at the end of the assessment, there would be some sort of like action plan, like, okay, I've done all this reflecting, and wouldn't it be nice to now reflect a little bit on like the next step. So I added an element at this stage about that. So I'll go ahead and give a shout out to Candace about that, because that was her idea. Thanks, girlfriend. Okay, so then the next stage was then to evaluate the assessment. I had received some feedback from my cohort, from Dr. Hadley, from my thesis committee, and then after making a few changes, I sent it out for evaluation. So I had developed an evaluation tool that just asked, I'm looking for it here, asked the evaluator to reflect on just their experience of taking the assessment. So I wasn't so much interested in their results of the assessment, but rather what was your experience of taking it? So it asks questions like, can you see this? About the instructions, the format, the length of time, is the assessment comprehensive? So as you can see, there is kind of a Likert scale here, and then there's an opportunity to like make a little comment about each specific one. How do you feel about the continuum scales, the self-reflection questions, the wording? Is it useful? And then at the end, there were two kind of open-ended questions. In what ways could it be improved? And in what ways do you imagine the self-assessment tool being used? So I was kind of curious about people's perceptions on the assessment and whether or not they even thought it was useful. So I'll tell you about that a little bit later too. So my evaluators, I ended up with a total of 16, 7 of who I'm calling advanced professionals for a lack of being able to find a better term for it. I hope it doesn't offend the people that I'm not calling advanced. But the reason for that label is everyone in this category had advanced degrees. And I wanted a group of people who, a group of music therapy professionals who had either published on the topic of burnout or who had developed an assessment tool in the field of music therapy. I thought their expertise in both of those areas would provide a lot of useful feedback. And I think I invited 22 people to from that category, and about 13 people responded, and out of that 13,
Janelle, are you there?
She's making a really lovely piece.
I know. I'll try texting her to tell her that she's frozen. Maven, can you text Janelle? Oh, you're back, Janelle. Sorry, my international phone won't go to non-iPhones.
I don't know any of the words that you just said.
I was trying to text you, but you don't have an iPhone, and being in Australia, I can only iMessage. So.
Got it.
Sorry.
But now I'm getting feedback.
Can you seem fine to me? It might just be me that's off right now.
I don't know.
Can everyone hear Janelle now?
I hear the feedback.
Yeah, I'm
it's
getting
her.
like echo. Is it me? Maybe I'll.
I hear you now.
Yes. Okay, Doc. So you just can't. You just gotta.
Well, you stopped there for a while.
I just disappeared.
Yeah. Oh, I saw your face, but no narrative.
Oh man. All right.
13 participants.
Thanks, Maeve.
I got you.
No, I just threw my papers everywhere because I was like, no, what happened? Anyway, 13 of something.
Advanced professionals.
Okay. Yes. I had 7 of them total. And then did I talk about the student professionals?
No, I did not hear that part.
Okay, great. But now I'm sad because I can't see you guys. Okay, we're gonna go back to the sharing of the screen. Now I see you. And now we're back. Okay, so I invited 22 advanced professionals to participate, and at the end of the day, 7 of them ended up participating and giving me evaluation feedback. And then I also had a group of student professionals who were graduate music therapy students, and the criteria for them to be involved was that they had to be practicing music therapy for at least a year. And I ended up, I think 13 people participated, but only 9 had been practicing for a year. So those were my evaluators. Are we all caught up? Did I miss? We good? Okay. All right, yeah, so they were invited to participate, and I gave them a PDF of the assessment and the evaluation questions, and then their job was just to complete the assessment and then complete the evaluation based on their experience of the assessment, and then return the evaluation back to me. At this stage, I wasn't really interested in their assessment results, but some of them chose to share that with me, which was kind of fun, but that wasn't really, you know, the information that I needed at the time, but that was kind of neat. Yes, so then after receiving the evaluation results, I had to dig through all of their feedback and any repeating issues of confusion or things like that resulted in changes made to the assessment. Some of it was on some wording. If like specific wording was a repeated issue, I made some changes to that. One of the big issues that I made was in the continuum scales. They didn't so much have a problem with the continuum scales themselves, but rather the layout of it and the direction of it. My original design was that the continuum scale, oh, maybe you can't see it, I tried to draw, was that in the middle would be your most balanced, like ideal space to be in, and then the outsides were kind of this like more extreme, like too little of something here, too much of something here, but right in the middle was just right. That was my original design, and that seemed to just cause quite a bit of confusion for a few people. I don't know if it was my wording. I don't know if it just maybe didn't work for all the items. I don't know if it was just because it was a non-traditional like like not good, okay, super great kind of line. I'm not sure. So, but just to kind of reduce the confusion and provide some clarity, I changed the direction to more of a not good, okay, and super great kind of a continuum. So that seemed to clear some things up for some people. There was some confusion as far as the, like, what the purpose of the assessment was and what the intention was and how to complete it. So I created a much more in-depth instructional page to kind of be helpful to that. And then some people were also interested in more step-by-step reflect like questions in the wellness action plan section. So I elaborated on that a little bit. So those were some of the big changes made after receiving results. I thought maybe at this time, just for those of you who haven't seen the final version, which would be Candace and Maven, you haven't seen kind of the final layout here. So here's like what the continuum scale ended up looking like. This kind of allows you to make a mark anywhere on the line wherever you see fit. If you like kind of the safety of the boxes, you can kind of end up there, but you can go anywhere on the line here. So you can see the different categories. And I was just going to show you, here are the open-ended questions that are after the professional wellness section and the personal wellness section. And then I was just going to show you the more step-by-step thorough wellness action plan that I added at the end. This was, I kind of based this off of some other resources that I came across. And it just kind of the original one was just a lot more generic and general. And a lot of people were asking like, gosh, it would be nice to have some more specific questions that kind of guided me on what to think about. So I took a couple other wellness action plans that were in some self-care books and kind of adapted it from there. So that's what that looks like. Hold on. I'm sure there's an easier way to go back and forth, but I don't know it. Okay. So the evaluators identified a lot of uses for the assessment, which was one of the questions that I had, whether or not something like this would be useful to the field. So several people identified that it would be useful to bring into professional supervision. It would be useful to administer to interns and students. Multiple people thought that taking it at regular intervals would be helpful, and a few of them suggested maybe like every 5 years at recertification. They thought it might become a good future research tool to be used in future research for music therapy. And then they also thought it might be useful to integrate into music therapy curriculum. And the evaluators identified that the strengths of the assessment as is that it is specific to the music therapy field, which was validating because that was the entire purpose of it. So I was glad that they found that that was a strength of it. They also identified that it was holistic and comprehensive in nature, that it really addressed like the whole person's self in a lot of different areas. And they really valued that it inspired critical self-reflection throughout the assessment. And then just a few things that came up as far as things to consider in the future. So as the assessment stands right now, it is not a validated tool, which means it hasn't been tested as you might for other assessments. for other assessment tools. So it hasn't been tested for like validity or reliability. Therefore, at this time, it can't really be used for like research, but that wasn't really my intention when I was designing this assessment. I really intended it to be just a personal self-reflective tool, but that might be something to consider for down the road. As far as the evaluators go, they really represent a very small sliver of the music therapist population. The evaluators were handpicked by me and with consultation from Dr. Hadley. And while I didn't know any of the evaluators personally, I knew their work and had a general assumption of what their philosophy would be on this particular topic and this particular tool. So some of their results might have been a little biased, but at the same time, I wanted to use their expertise for feedback. So moving forward, the next stage of development of this tool might be to pilot it with a larger, more randomized group of music therapists that might provide just some extra feedback. I also feel that maybe there was some missed opportunity to reflect a little more on a person's relationship with their cultural identities and how those identities interact with their personal and professional environments and how that might play a role in a music therapist's sense of wellness. While this is briefly discussed in like the environmental and ecological sections of the assessment, I think there's a little more room for that to be explored a little more in depth. However, the assessment as it is already like really extensive, and the complexity of those issues would just make for a really exhaustive document. So I think there's an opportunity for maybe a development of an assessment that addresses just those areas. I think that could be also a cool project for somebody else another day, not today. And then, as I mentioned earlier, this whole project started because of my own interest and personal relationship with burnout. And when you have a personal relationship with something, it's impossible for your bias to kind of show through. And so in the research studies that I read about, the language that I used, the layout of the assessment, my personal experience with burnout kind of played a role in all of that. And while I was really cognizant of that and tried to minimize that bias by collaborating with my cohort, with my thesis committee, with the evaluators, I think it's still, is prevalent throughout the research, which I think is just important for people to know as they're completing the assessment. And I think that's all I have to say about that. And then just kind of in conclusion, I'll just wrap up with saying that the wellness self-assessment for music therapists was developed to encourage self-reflection on areas of music therapist's personal and professional life that might be positively or negatively contributing to their sense of wellness. I felt that it was really important to design something that was unique and specific to the field, and I attempted to do that by basing it solely on pre-existing music therapy research. It was designed by a music therapist, it was evaluated by music therapists, so I think its foundation is strong in music therapy. And my hope is that this becomes a tool that inspires discussion of the topic and self-reflection of the topic, promotes self-care and just overall clinician health, because the better that we take care of ourselves, the better we're able to work with the people that we work with and preserve our positions in the professional world. So that was the intention, and hopefully it plays out. And I think at this time, I'll see what you have to say about it. If
So
you have any questions?
I'm going to start by saying congratulations on and nicely presented. I don't know if you're getting feedback from me again in terms of the computer.
No.
Okay, it's good now. And I want to, shall we first start with people who haven't given you formal feedback yet, just to see if any of, like Candace or Maven or even Nicole, sorry, I know you came in late, Nicole, had any questions or comments for you, and then we can go to your readers.
I mean, I just wanted to say it's really nice to see like the final thing. Like, you can't see I'm making a motion. It looks really nice to have like a finished product. There's a circular motion with it. Yeah, because I know it was like to start with nothing and then have it be like this final thing.
Yeah,
I'm excited to read the whole thing when you're done. Well, you're done when it's out there in the world.
Yeah. Thanks, Maven. Yeah, it's funny, like it's something that like I've been working on like nonstop, and so like for what seems like forever, so to go back and think about those beginning stages was just like, wait, wow, that was so like long ago. I don't even remember how this all started. I just feel like I've been working on it so long, and it's taken so many like twists and turns, and so.
I don't have any questions, but similar to Maven, just wanted to say how cool it is to see the finished product, especially with like the action plan, and it turned out really cool. And I really like how like with the continuum too, how you also like have it laid out to where like you can use the lines, but that like even in between, like it's very, I don't know, I feel like that would be really useful to even like explore like where you're at, even like in between the lines too. I like how like just not restrictive it is, and with the open questions too. And I also would really like to take it soon. I'm like excited to do that myself.
Yeah. Thanks, Candace.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up to whoever wants to go first, Sue or Melody. Do you want to go first, Sue? As the senior person in our field.
I'm just really impressed, Janelle, with your thoroughness and the detail that you put into this, especially that review of literature analysis. That was wonderful, the way you organized that. And through the analysis of the evaluation, you were very, very thorough and complete there. I thought that was great. And I also wanted to comment on how great I thought it was that you got such a wonderful result, results from your evaluators. They really gave you lots of feedback, lots of comments. So I think you had tremendous response in that respect. And also I really liked the way you responded to each comment in your paper. You really analyzed their responses and gave a rationale for if you were going to change it, or if you weren't, why you weren't. So I just thought it was really great. I did have a question. I wondered if you had considered another research question. Had you thought of any other research questions to put in the paper? What I was thinking of, and you answered it so well through the paper, was what would an assessment of this sort look like? What would the content? And you answered that through your wonderful review of lit. And I thought that would be another basic question to put in the paper.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that would be that would easily be inserted in there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that was ever an initial question that I thought of, because I didn't really know what sort of journey I was going on until I was halfway through the journey. So absolutely, that was like it wasn't explicitly stated, but that was always kind of in the back of my mind. What's this even going to look like? So yeah. Thank you.
It's interesting, Sue, in my mind the whole time was your dissertation and your way of asking people for feedback, but we couldn't find it anywhere.
Yeah.
And
Vanished.
so it sort of had to be from memory, like Sue's done something like this, but we just can't find it.
I know, I do not know what happened there.
Yeah, it's so funny that you know something exists, but you actually can't access it.
Right.
And that was a little bit of a struggle. And Melody, I think you mentioned this in your feedback as well. Just I didn't really have a set way. I didn't know a set way of going about developing this. So it was just a little of reading other research studies on assessment. What did they do? And kind of, but this is such a unique thing because it's not for clinical work. It's, and it's self-reflective. So it's kind of its own thing. And so how can I, incorporate what other people have done and what other methods people have and steps people have taken, but still make it applicable to what I was doing. And so that was kind of a tricky thing to balance.
Absolutely. I think in hearing you present about it as well, like when I was reading through it, I was like, this is like a pre-dissertation with the amount of work that you have done, because you almost have like multiple studies within this one study that you've done.
I did not set out to do that. I did,
yeah.
But as I went about, I thought, I need to spend some time with that, and I really need to develop that before I can move on to that. And you're right.
Yeah. So if you choose to go on, I think you have enough to work with here to use this as a basis or a springboard to multiple other studies that you could do.
Right.
But yeah, I was just reading over my feedback again to jog my memory about it. And you have done some, just the systematic review of the literature in and of itself is enough to like, just kind of put that all in one place, like you said at the beginning of your presentation. So I would just encourage you to do more with this and not just let this sit in and of itself personally.
Great. Thank you.
It's and knowing Janelle, it will take a little prodding to actually get it out there in the public eye. But hopefully we can prod.
Yeah, I think you should do a CMTE if you haven't already incorporating this.
Janelle, you made such a strong case for the value of self-reflection and self-assessment in regard to burnout. I just think you definitely need to continue with this idea, because I think it's a very valuable resource, and you need to get it out there.
Cool.
I actually had a question, Melody, for you with the systematic review.
Mm-hmm.
Is she kind of halfway there with that?
Yep. Yeah. Really just like fleshing out how the review is done. That could easily be a paper right there in no time, in my humble opinion.
So you could probably try sending a larger version of it to qualitative inquiries, and then a couple of smaller versions as published papers in journals and CMTEs. And if you do them at the Mid-Atlantic region, they'll give you some money.
Oh.
I mean, that's better than some of the other regions. Some of the other regions you get maybe a few dollars or nothing. But the Mid-Atlantic region tends to do it by how many people show up to it. And if it's on burnout, you'll get a lot of people showing up to it.
Yeah.
So, and you could do it every other year or something for a while.
Right.
So, yeah. Any other suggestions other than all the feedback you've given already to Janelle for anything that needs to be done? Add that extra research question.
Yes.
And I'm thinking it's looking great. I'm really proud of you, and I think it's a good addition to the literature. So I want to say congratulations, and yes, I believe that you've more than passed and done a really fabulous job. So.
Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for all of your help and your support and your insight and your deadlines and
I have to tell you that at one point I was saying to Janelle, Janelle, I'm having a really hard time with the review of literature. And so I had suggested coming up with the rationale for doing it first and see if that would lead her into how to format. But every time she went to do an outline for the review of literature, she went into this rabbit hole of the internet, getting more stuff and saying, I'm finding more things. And I want to add this into it. And I'm like, stop.
Yeah. And there's definitely some value in that because that contributed to the very detailed nature of everything. But boy, that sure did spiral me into some places that I had a hard time getting out of. Just really extended some projects and things. So, yeah.
So it was a year and a half of, it's now over. You can breathe again. It was worthwhile.
Yeah, but I'm hearing that it's not over, that I have other work to do on it is what I'm hearing and things to do with it, which I suppose isn't a bad place to be in, but I might take a few weeks to not go first.
Yeah, you can have a little break first, but it would be really, I'll be on your case a little bit to get it out there.
That's all right. I can handle that.
And again, it's really beautiful to see both Sue and Melody here on screen, face to face.
That's so nice.
And
thanks for inviting me.
I really appreciate you doing this, Melody, at such a difficult time.
Thank you. I'm happy to have the distraction.
Yeah. So, love to all your family.
Thanks.
And congratulations, Janelle.
Yes.
Great work. But do take some rest. Get some rest.
I think I'll reintroduce myself to my husband.
Yay.
I might vacuum. I don't know. Sky's the limit.
and tell him that I approved of his wardrobe change and everything for you for tonight.
Oh, yeah. I was like, did he have a costume change? I told him to not sneak in here. He wanted to, but I told him he couldn't.
All right. Well, I'm going to now go and have my morning coffee and wake up. Okay. As
Yeah,
you-
thank you,
as
Doc,
you
for
know, actually, no, I think I'm meeting with Maven first. So, but great work.
You can have coffee while you talk to me. You
Yeah,
can do that.
I might run off and get my coffee and come back to talk to you.
That sounds good.
And Candace, you're up next when you tell me whenever that's going to be. But
We'll figure it out.
it's your turn next. All right. Good night,
It's
y'all.
good to see everybody and hear everybody. Thank you very much for everything.
Well done.
Congratulations.
You're welcome.
Congratulations.
Great job, Janelle.
Thank you very much. All right, now how do I get out of here? I'm with you, Sue. How do we get out of here? Every time. Oh,
End meeting. I think, is it on
There
the
we go.
right?
bottom right. Leave meeting. I'm leaving. Bye. Oh, wait. I didn't leave. Oh,
It's the bottom right of the screen, Sue, I think.
Is it red?
Ah,
Maybe. If your cursor goes down there. No.
no.
You might just be able to exit out of the screen too.
Okay, I will shut down. So goodbye.
All right. Bye. Or I can end the meeting and then start a new one.
Here.
Can you X out of the X?